Guys, Jake Paul's taking on Ben Askren in April. Is this ridiculous or actually a good fight? We're going to talk about that right now. What's up, Barnhill family? Welcome back to the channel.
Yo.
So, Nick, the YouTube boxing extravaganza is continuing. We have Jake Paul, who has called out everyone from Conor McGregor to Dylan Dennis, and has now landed on his next opponent, and he is going to be engaging in a striking-only boxing match against wrestling specialist and MMA, former MMA champion Ben Askren. To me, Nick, this seems like a bit of a cowardly move on Paul's part, and I'll tell you why. It's simply because you look at the landscape of MMA, and you have some people who have incredible boxing backgrounds, incredible jiu-jitsu backgrounds, incredible Muay Thai backgrounds, and incredible wrestling backgrounds, and then they kind of round their game out. Everybody has known Ben Askren since the beginning of his MMA career as being a dominant, wrestling-heavy, take you down, exhaust you, ground and pound sort of fighter. So when you have a guy like Jake Paul who says, I'm going to be the next Floyd Mayweather, I'm a great boxer, I'm going to be going down as one of the all-time greats, and oh, by the way, for my next fight, give me the guy that does almost no boxing. To me, it seems a bit disingenuous. It seems a bit cowardly. And I think he's trying to pick favorable matchups for himself. And you can't talk out of both sides of your mouth. You can't be like, I want to take on the best, I'm going to be the best, and at the same time, I want to fight a guy who does almost no boxing. Am I wrong in this thinking?
Well, no, I think you're spot on with thinking that he wants to pick favorable matchups. I think that Jake Paul is looking to go in and win fights, and he wants to fight the easiest opponent for the most amount of money as many times as he can, all while saying how tough he is and not really having to prove it. That being said, I do see a slight northern trajectory as far as his strength of opponent is going. I mean, we went from YouTuber to NBA player. Turns out there wasn't a big difference, but athletically there is a difference. Now we're going to world-class wrestling athlete and MMA champion. Now, I do understand that Ben Askren's not a striker and really doesn't throw combinations well or box well at all. But, you know, I will have to give credit where credit's due, and if Jake is willing to continue this trajectory and fight tougher guys as the thing goes along, then I guess I'm getting a little bit of what I want. I'd prefer to see Jake fight other 3-0 or 2-0 or 2-1 boxers, but that's just not the game he's in right now. He wants to try to fight as big a names as he possibly can, and he doesn't really care what sport or industry they come from. At this point, I think most people realize that non-combat sports athletes are not going to want to get in there with somebody who is training boxing and has trained for a few years. Combat sports athletes, especially ones that came from MMA and wrestling, they understand that undefeated records are not something that you have to live and die by like you do in boxing. Ben Askren is okay with not getting his hand raised in an MMA fight as long as he's there to compete. I do think that Ben will be his toughest test to date. Yeah. Not saying that that's going to be that difficult for him. But I think that Ben does understand combat a little bit better than, or infinitely better than all the other people that he's fought so far. And while I don't like this matchup, I don't really like the promotional side of this thing. I will at least give credit where credit's due and say that he is actually making slight upgrades in his opponents.
Yeah, and I think this could be a big miscalculation by Paul, thinking that he's going to come in there and wax Ben Askren because he's... And remember, you see Ben Askren striking, and his striking doesn't look that good. No. Now, let's remember who he's striking against. People like Robbie Lawler, former UFC champions, people that are levels and levels and levels above the level that Jake Paul's not even at the level to shine the shoes of those type of people, let alone compete against them. And Ben Askren, while he's looked not great against those people, it's easy to look foolish against the best, and it's easy to look good against a nobody. So I think this could be a big miscalculation by Paul. Not to say that Ben Askren can't box. Ben Askren can box. That's not his strength. That's not his specialty. But he's been training in MMA gyms for decades.
Right.
He's hitting pads.
Right.
He's getting in there and sparring rounds with people. He's got a great gas tank. He knows how to last. He knows how to keep himself safe, even if he's not going to, really engage in these devastating knockout sort of exchanges like we've never seen Askren do before. He does know how to keep himself relatively safe, and I think that he's going to take Jake Paul into later rounds. Jake's not going to come in there and starch Ben Askren in the first round. We're going to see how much, Jake says, I'm dedicated to this sport. I do cardio. I run. I'm in great shape. We're going to see just how good a shape Jake truly is in and if that's all talk or not. But again, I think this might be a bit of a miscalculation. I think that Askren is going to be categorically more difficult than anybody that Jake has sparred with or fought professionally.
Yeah, I agree. And Ben Askren, for a guy that had the fire in him and never 100% lost the fire to compete, but had hip surgery and horrible hips and all that stuff, for him to be able to get a fight, and not only a fight, but a fight against somebody that he could potentially beat for a lot of money. I'm happy to see a good payday go to a guy like Ben Askren. Ben Askren's a good egg as far as the MMA world goes. He's funny. He does his part to try to shine up fighters and shine up cards and promotions and stuff like that. So I'm happy to see him get this opportunity to fight, the Joker of the YouTube Boxing World Series, whatever. But I think that what will help Ben tremendously is wrestling in the boxing ring. And I know boxing doesn't involve wrestling in any way.
Right.
But distributing your weight and making people feel your weight and carry your weight and dirty boxing, all of that stuff is a very real part of boxing. And if you can do it and you can do it effectively, you can make your opponent tired.
Yep.
And I think what he's going to do is, keep himself safe, jab, grab, and try to tire Jake out, try to get his arms tired, because he's going to feel things when they're together that Jake has not felt before.
Right.
And, if Ben's able to exhaust him a little bit in those types of clinch situations, get him a little bit flustered because he can't get off a clean boxing combination and stuff like that, then you might see a little bit of an angry Jake Paul that comes with a little bit of a, seeing red type of vibe and starts just to try to knock him out. And then if he's able to keep himself safe, work on his counterpunching. I hope he's utilizing all of the friends that he's made over the years that do know how to box and strike. And if there's one thing we know about Ben Askren, it's discipline. He's a disciplined guy. He's going to be in the gym until this fight happens, and he's going to be working hard. And it's like what Bruce Lee says. He doesn't need to go learn all the ins and outs and the 1,000 different ways to throw each punch that there is. He needs to work on a few things really well, study the little bit of tape that Jake Paul has out on him, and go exploit those openings.
Yeah, and again, I know I sounded a bit harsh as far as this fight and Jake calling out Askren, but my frustration is really because Jake seems to me to be speaking out of both sides of his mouth. He says, I'm the greatest boxer. I'm going to be the next Floyd Mayweather. I want to take on the best guys available. And then he says, have you seen Dylan Dennis' striking, and have you seen Ben Askren striking? It's horrible. Mm-hmm. So how are you calling out, saying I want to take on the best, but then saying, just admitting very candidly, the next two opponents that I want suck at striking? You can't have it both ways. And I think he's going to find out that Ben Askren doesn't suck at striking. He just looks like he sucks at striking because he's fighting the best strikers in the world. Yeah. And I think that Jake might end up paying the price for this, especially if Ben Askren is in the gym and as dedicated as we've seen him be throughout the years.
Yeah, and hopefully he can train a lot. I know that hip has been giving him tons of trouble lately, and he hasn't been as active in the gym as he was when he was fighting in the UFC. But yeah, I think Jake will understand a little bit more what it's like to be in a combat sports arena with a real combat sports athlete after this fight.
This guy's not afraid. He's made, KSI, was his brother? Deji. Yeah. Deji was very afraid.
Yeah.
Nate Robinson was very afraid to engage, to get hit. Ben Askren is not going to be afraid to engage, and he's not going to be afraid to get hit. No. Ben Askren has been hit by things a lot harder than Jake Paul's punch, namely Jorge Masvidal's flying knee. So,
yeah, for sure. And he's a little bit closer in size to Jake Paul. Jake Paul oversized these guys by a lot. in his past 2 fights. I think Jake will still be the bigger guy, but I think closing the gap on that a little bit will benefit Ben Askren a little bit. And I'm down to talk about these fights, and we can always chat about it. If there's something interesting happening in the world of MMA or boxing or combat sports in general, we'll talk about it. But
these videos tend to be shorter than our more in-depth.
And we don't have quite as much fun watching those cards as we do a UFC fight or something.
Yeah, and I will say just before we wrap, Ben Askren said 7th round TKO. I think that's pretty accurate. I would predict around the same thing, because I believe that Jake Paul, as he gets after round 5, round 6, is going to be extremely sloppy, extraordinarily gassed, and fighting with his hands down. So I could see it happen.
Yeah,
Ben Askren's not going to gas.
Yeah, my early prediction, and we'll probably predict this one later as the fight goes on and we get more news and footage and whatnot. I think it goes all 8 rounds. I think they both have knockout power for about 2-3 rounds, and then it's all gone, and then it's just going to be a slop fest, just as we'd come to expect YouTube boxing to be.
Yeah, so. Guys, let us know, is this fight ridiculous, or are you looking forward to it? I'm not a big hater on the YouTube boxing. I think that there's a way to do it to where it's competitive and fun, but it's not, where these guys are calling out the biggest names in the sport, thinking that they're actual true world-class boxers. I do believe there's a place for it. Let us know in the comments. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think this type of stuff should continue or not? We always look forward to the great comments you guys leave. And please like, comment, and subscribe if you've enjoyed the video, and check us out on audio where you listen to podcasts. Have a great day.
Peace.